Carter I didn't know, but he knew who I was. When the police won't help you and the priests don't believe you, you call on Paul Prospero. You call on me.
It always starts here, in this dark tunnel. The slow, measured introduction quietly sets the stage for a powerful tale, a tale which remains as engaging as ever. If you've never walked this lonely rail yourself, then there's good news. The Vanishing of Ethan Carter has re-emerged once more for what is likely to be its final appearance, this time on Xbox One. While the mystery buried within this compelling world is certainly intriguing, from our perspective, it's the journey of its developer that is perhaps most fascinating here. First released in 2014 on the PC, The Vanishing of Ethan Carter has undergone several surgeries on its way to Xbox One. In porting the game to PlayStation 4 years ago, its developer completely overhauled the game by porting it from Unreal Engine 3 to Unreal 4. In its updated state, the team worked hard to translate its gorgeous but static global illumination and photogrammetry-based assets into the new engine, and the results speak for themselves. Ethan Carter retains its stylized, pseudo-realistic appearance while introducing brand new Unreal 4 specific effects into the mix. We were certainly impressed with this Redux version of the game back in 2015, and in 2018, it's almost surprising just how beautifully it still holds up today. With forests and structures stretching out as far as the eye can see, Ethan Carter remains as gorgeous as ever. And on Xbox One, the game offers a handful of new features designed to welcome Xbox players to its world. Further refined visuals are combined with full support for the Xbox One X and a new free roam mode. As a fan of the original release then, I was certainly curious to see how well it holds up on Microsoft's new machine. And it just so happens that on Xbox One X, Ethan Carter offers a slew of options that we don't typically see on consoles. Pop into the options menu and you're offered the choice between 3 different resolutions, the option to cap the frame rate, and the option to adjust the field of view. In comparison, on the regular Xbox One, you have the option to modify the FOV or cap the frame rate, but the resolution is fixed at 1080p, which is still kind of an impressive achievement considering that, aside from Gears 4, most other UE4 games that I've tested on Xbox One opt for resolutions below 1080p. All of this is to say that whether you're using an Xbox One, an S, or the Xbox One X, its developer, the Astronauts, has made sure that you're going to have a good experience, at least overall. Okay, so our first question is pretty simple then. Beyond the resolution, are there any other differences between Xbox One and Xbox One X? Well, the higher resolution does allow for improved texture filtering, which is something. But aside from that, the two versions appear generally equal in terms of visual details, which is to say that both consoles offer a richly detailed world to explore. If we bring the PS4 version into the mix, however, it becomes obvious that there have been changes made since this last release. Namely, the scene lighting varies slightly between the two console versions. Which one do you guys prefer? It should also be mentioned at this point that, unfortunately, the PS4 version still lacks support for the Ps4 Pro outside of boost mode, and according to the developer, implementing the improvements included in the Xbox One version would require enough extra work that it's not really feasible right now, though they didn't completely rule it out. As a small indie team, this is perfectly understandable. So, with the 3 resolutions to choose from on an Xbox One X, you're probably wondering which one to choose here. As you might have surmised at this point, the choice is tied directly to performance. The higher the resolution, the lower the frame rate. Simple, right? Well, let's start here at 2160p. At this resolution, the game looks remarkably sharp and clean. The anti-aliasing solution cleans up foliage edges, texture filtering looks great, and the game simply beckons you to sit closer to your large 4K display, but clearly, performance isn't quite where we would have liked. The frame rate hangs below 60 frames per second most of the time when using the native 4K mode, but ultimately does at least remain above 30 FPS, which is a good thing. If you're not bothered by the judder incurred by running at an unlocked frame rate, then clearly this is a great way to play the game because it does look so nice. Theoretically then, if you wanted to enjoy the game at 4K and you didn't like judder, Well, there's the 30 FPS frame rate cap. So how does that work? On paper, this should have solved the issue entirely, but in reality, it's unfortunately flawed. Basically, it seems like the frame rate is capped at 32 frames per second instead of 30, which means it no longer divides evenly into the refresh rate, causing noticeable judder as a result. You can see this here in the frame time graph if you look to the left there. All those little spikes manifest as extra judder. The same issue is present in the PS4 version, it should be mentioned. Both versions lock to 32 frames per second when the cap is enabled. Seeing as this is a new release on the Xbox One though, perhaps there's still time to fix this in a patch. Another interesting thing about the native 4K mode becomes apparent when drawing comparisons with the base Xbox One version. On Xbox One S at 1080p, the frame rate is remarkably similar to Xbox One X at native 4K here in the woods, but eventually as we make our way across the less demanding bridge area, the X starts to pull ahead. So while Xbox One S offers reasonable performance, the X is faster overall, even when pushing 4 times the number of pixels. Quite an impressive feat. So how about 1440p then? This has proven to be my favorite option in the game, and for a couple of reasons. Mainly, performance manages to hang much closer to 60 frames per second when using this mode. Now, it's still not perfect by any means, of course, but it's high enough that it feels overall very smooth, while the excellent motion blur helps to minimize judder. Beyond that, the resolution is still a noticeable leap above 1080p, allowing for beautiful visuals even if they're not quite as pin sharp as native 4K. All in all, 1440p is a pretty good compromise here, I feel. Now, if you want that extra stability, however, that's where the 1080p option comes into play. When running at 1080p, Ethan Carter manages to come very close to turning in a locked 60 frames per second experience. From the initial forest section to the bridge, we're averaging out at a frame rate right at 60. Of course, as we move back into the thick of it, the frame rate starts to drop a little bit below the target, but the drop is small enough that it doesn't really spoil the fluidity. At this point, the CPU is likely the bottleneck here, but overall, this is a good way to play it if you want the most consistency. Of course, this mode also makes for an interesting comparison. Xbox One X at 1080p versus the PS4 Pro using boost mode, also at 1080p. As you can see, the X performs significantly faster here versus the Pro. Of course, we need to keep in mind that the PS4 version here is based on an older release of Unreal Engine 4. This is older code, so it's not exactly an apples to apples comparison, but still, the results are enlightening for sure. In fact, overall, this kind of demonstrates how impressive the performance gains are in this engine, even on a standard Xbox One. Here's how the Xbox One S stacks up against a PS4 Pro using boost mode. Clearly the Pro is faster, as it should be, but the Xbox One version manages to hang reasonably close. The development team did an amazing job optimizing the game for standard Xbox One systems, that's for sure. And this is kind of an important point to hit home, because there's always been this fear that with the Xbox One X on the market, that Xbox One owners might get a lesser experience, but in this case it's clear that you still get a great experience regardless of your platform. Though obviously the X is going to be the best way to experience this game on a console right now. Beyond performance, while the rest of the presentation is generally excellent, it's not quite perfect. There's noticeable sound glitches that can pop up from time to time. When walking into this area, for instance, I noticed popping noises that sounded like this. And in other cases, dialogue could be cut off abruptly and the voices replayed, which is kind of weird, like this.
He didn't need to worry. I'd worked dozens of cases, hundreds. This would be my last one. He didn't need to worry. I'd worked dozens of cases, hundreds. This would be my last one.
While these issues don't crop up enough to spoil the experience, it is surprising to encounter them at all in what is basically the game's final form. Still, looking at the overall experience, the Vanishing of Ethan Carter is a great one on Xbox. If you have an Xbox One X, you're getting the best possible experience with the game on a console, while standard Xbox One owners receive a reasonably solid version of the game as well. The only real nitpick here lies with the frame rate cap. If the team could smooth it out and implement a proper 30 FPS cap with even frame pacing, it would allow for a very stable 30 FPS frame rate at native 4K on the Xbox One X, or at least a stable 30 FPS on the regular Xbox One at 1080p. So, Xbox owners, if you haven't played through Ethan Carter yet and enjoy a good narrative-focused puzzle exploration game, it's well worth a look. It's intriguing and still very beautiful even years after its initial release. I definitely recommend checking it out. That's all for now though. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give us a like, subscribe to the channel on YouTube, and follow us over on Twitter. And until next time, this is John, signing off.